Microsoft shares are hitting a record high for basically anything there's an app. And the question is, are we all relying on digitization for our job future? As we all see, more and more aspects of the business world are going tech, or tech supported at least. Is digitization without any alternatives? Is digitization what we have to do? Is there any alternative? Or is it something where we just have to accept it is there and we have no chance to pretty much avoid it? So is digitization inevitable? I'll give you 3 examples. Let's say you have a sales team and either you run your sales team with a clipboard, which worked for decades, or you give them a tablet, whatever vendor you use there. That's just example number 1. Example number 2, you have a team and you can decide either to work in the office only or you implement remote work in one way or the other, as many people did many organizations did after the global pandemic. So how do you decide there? Third example, customer contact. You either have a till where someone is sitting, you have a chat, and then they scan the items, and then you just take their money or the card or whichever else means they prefer to pay. Or you implement self-checkout where nothing of that is there and people just pay by themselves, they scan by themselves. So obviously a digitized solution here. And of course, as soon as you go through all these 3 examples, you have controversies, conflict, and due to that often inefficiencies, project running late. And then people wonder, do we really need the digitized stuff, or is it just the next trend that we're going to revoke in 10 years time or 20 years time? So let's look at that. So first, case number 1. When you look at the sales team, there's an obviously higher efficiency when you use a tablet over a clipboard. With a tablet, everything's on there. You connect it to the internet via either Wi-Fi or just by 5G, 4G, wherever you have it in your region. And depending on the country you're also in, hello, Germany here. Still have some work to do there. However, you do not have to sit down at the hotels in the evening after you went to a client side and have to write it all down. Also, when it starts a bit of rain, probably you can't read your clipboard or your clipboard gets lost or gone. With a tablet, when it gets lost, data still available in the cloud. Also, when a bit of rain gets on there, you can still read what you typed in there before. So that's an obvious point for digitization in this sales situation. So can we just mass generalize that? Let's go to aspect number 2. Aspect number 2, either you work on site or you implement remote work. Is it the same where you say, okay, just take the modern one? Well, it's probably not, because often people now say, well, when you work from home, what about team culture? What about organizational culture? And here we see it getting a bit more complicated. And when we go to example number 3, customer and client contact, where someone says, well, I remember that there was a news somewhere in Northern England where they put these digital tills back in the bin and went all back to the personal cashiers they had before the till. And yes, we had this one case. The question is this one case a business case which you can refer to? Is this the future, or do we still have to go for self-checkout? And let's look at all these 3 aspects. So looking at the sales team, it is never acceptable if someone just says, I don't do the new thing. If someone simply is on the point where they say, whatever you present to me, I will just say, no, my attitude of refusal has priority here. Then, of course, you can say, well, obviously not. Of course, and that is a prerequisite. You have to offer professional training programs, meaning professional training programs. Not the $49 lunch break during your break webinar, which is completely pointless and off the shelf, or someone internally takes a PowerPoint slide and reads them out to you. You need professional training, meaning people who are professionally qualified to deliver education to other people. And if you're unable to do that, then you probably should reconsider what you're doing there. So, of course, an attitude of refusal is not acceptable. However, it's also not acceptable to implement something without offering training programs for that. So an excellent company that did it right was Coca-Cola. When they digitized their whole sales team, they knew how to implement that, but they also decided in the end, after everything that was offered in the first place, including professional training and coaching programs, people going with you to the client side, showing you every single bit step by step. And when you then still say, no, I'm not going to use the iPad, then you're probably not there anymore. And just my personal opinion here, that's the right decision if your attitude of refusal, in your opinion, is more important than any offer an organization professionally gave to you. Looking at the second aspect with the team, when you say, well, it's all about team culture and organizational culture, you actively have to design these cultures. It means you have to offer work from home, but that's not where it stops. What about work from anywhere? What about compliance aspect? Where can you handle data? Where are you allowed to have public phone calls? Do you need closed rooms that need to be locked? And if you want to have more information on that, here's a book I recommend you to read. It's Professor Neely's Remote Work Revolution. Very important here is facts rule over opinions. I'm absolutely, and I have to be as straightforward as I can on this podcast, I'm absolutely sick of leaders telling me, oh, sorry, it doesn't work here. We're a conservative company. We're a conservative industry, blah, blah, blah. It's all a personal opinion. And you know it's a personal opinion. And by the way, it's an attitude of refusal by leaders, which is the worst. These leaders claim that change is inevitable. Now you, for the first time in probably decades, have to change, and you refuse to do so, which makes you lose any credibility towards your people. And when you say it doesn't work here, you are fully aware that you have an opinion, which is why you always cover it up, saying, oh, we made different experiences here. Different experiences means I just tell you how you sound like. When you say, oh, I heard about this guy, Isaac Newton and this 9.81 meters per second, like gravity. We made different experiences here on gravity. This is how you sound like. You sound like someone who really lost the plot a while ago. So please read Remote Work Revolution. It's going to change your point of view. I don't mean that any job can go virtual. I don't mean any job works with remote work or work from home, work from anywhere. But a lot of jobs do. And if you refuse to accept that, you're talking without any factual evidence, which disqualifies you as a leader completely. And going to step number 3, the third case I gave you, the customer and client contact. When you say, oh, there was this one till which they threw back in the bin and now they're all back to personal cashiers. Yeah, hear the news. And I quote Francis Peters from Harvard Business School. N equals 1 is no evidence. Just because in one place it didn't work, we can still say there are about 1 million places where it works. And by the way, I am one of the clients who prefers to do self-checkout. Also, when some group is just too, I don't want to call them lazy, but let's say when someone says they don't want to do self-checkout, it's a mixture of being too comfortable, but also a bit of schmuck behavior. When you think that the convenience of having someone talking to you is always there for you, it must remain that way. Well, if someone says we can go down that route, of course, it's pretty expensive and social costs are going up. And so with inflation and any other costs, so of course you're willing to pay for your goods and everything you eat just about 20% more, are you? Suddenly, clients very quickly adopt to other situations. By the way, we see the same tendency with airline, travel, hotels. People all want all the service and then they don't want to pay for it. And of course, there are two sides to the game. However, N equals 1 is never an evidence. And if one group of your clients is just too lazy or too schmuck or too convenient to adapt, you really have to reconsider, do you really want that group of customers? Do you really want to hold them? Or do you simply say, I just move on with a generation that now comes up that has a different attitude towards how to handle things more efficiently? We need to have more efficiency to keep jobs alive. And however, it doesn't mean that we can keep all the jobs alive. I just tell you from where I grew up. My home village didn't do too well when I grew up there, and it still is, let's say, doing not too great. If we say, when was this village doing well? We need to say, oh, well, I mean, we have to abolish cars because when we still had blacksmith and horse carriages, my village was doing pretty well. They were a pretty good hotspot for many people with the horse carriages. So why not go back to these days? And we don't want to go back to these days. Very important is not every job will sustain in the future, not even including the discussion about AI and how many jobs might be affected by that. The question now is, how do you deal with that? And there are 3 main groups you can enter, and it's your choice which group you assign yourself to. So number 1 is the optimist. And I give you, by the way, I now give you word by word quotes from customers that I have. So this is a quote from a mid-sized company with an engineering background. They were massively affected by globalization, massively affected by digitization, massively affected by the global pandemic, even to the brink of their existence was not clear during the pandemic. And the CEO of that company said, onwards, online, offline. That was the claim that company made, and they are doing better than ever. That is the optimist group. Do I consider myself being part of that? Probably not. Maybe it's a born and bred Northern German thing. I don't know. However, I'm not that optimistic, but they say we go with the flow of modernization because this is how we thrive, and they obviously now do. Of course, now you can derive what is the other group that's still there. Yes, that's the pessimist side. And someone from a banking insurance background there said, online only awful. And I'm going to spare you from the rest of the phrase. It gets worse from there. They just want to roll back everything to what it was before, all work on site, all a bit more like clique-ish, and your career is based on your network rather than your skills, because, and I quote, it always worked that way. Well, look at the 2008, how well that worked. So when you are part of the pessimist, I can just wish you good luck, because you will need that. If you're part of the pessimist brigade, there will be not much in there for you in the future. And as a leader, I would not preferably pick you for any job that is accountable or holds accountability to anything. And by the way, it's perfectly fine when you now say, hey, Niels, after 30 years or 20 years in business, I really don't want to do the next change. And that's perfect. Perfectly okay. Just then please move away from any job that is still occupied by you and give it to people who are a bit more modern in their approaches or open-minded in their approaches. The third group is, in my opinion, the most interesting one. It's the realist group. And I quote a leader from a fashion chain. And I mean a fashion chain that has massive costs running stores around the world, entering different markets right now. Of course, I have to disclose a bit of bias here. It's someone who is from my region, so a northern German part. And he said the internet wins. And that, for someone who's on board level, who knows they are running stores, these stores are expensive, they have to be staffed, costs are running onwards and upwards, nothing's getting cheaper, and for the foreseeable future, it will go only more expensive. But they know they need these stores for the branding, for the presence, for certain customers they want to keep, and as they are on the higher end level of pricing in the fashion chain, they will probably go on that way for a reasonable amount of time, if not forever, to get the brand out there. But still they know the online business is what drives the future. Once you know the brand, probably next time you're going to order online instead of visiting a store, depending on your preferences. And maybe in the fashion industry, they say stores can be pretty good because some things you just need to touch and feel and see, and just want to wander around the store to see, hey, I never had seen that online, but I see it in a store. The internet wins. That is a balanced approach. Of course, I can't tell you if that leader is great with anything or everything, because I can't judge with one phrase the whole personality and the delivery of performance of a leader. However, that statement definitely is the right way to go, in my opinion. And as I told you, my own village was affected negatively by globalization, digitization, and anything that goes in that direction. And still, I can only tell you, if you want to stick to we do it the old way, your future might be limited. So taking this all together, how can we sum this up? Is digitization inevitable? Yes. However, is digitization without alternatives? No. There are many alternatives how you can implement digitization. The only alternative you do not have is not doing it. So just to give you a brief or a summary on the whole talk today, digitization is not without alternatives. However, it is inevitable, at least when you want to sustain as a successful organization for the future. And if you prefer to do so and you choose to do so, I wish you all the best doing so, and all the best of luck and the best of business. And of course, now you might say, well, I have a couple of questions or statements on that. Feel free to contact me. My email address you find in the show notes of this podcast. It's nb@nb-networks.com. You also find my LinkedIn in the show notes of my podcast. Feel free to connect with me on there as well. The second aspect, and by the way, you can ask me absolutely anything, give me feedback, send questions, whatever you want. Doesn't cost you a penny. If you want something very specific, you want training, speaking, coaching, speaker for your event, whatever, we can talk about that as well, but we can also just talk about your questions. The second aspect I always recommend is join our live sessions. We have live sessions talking about these and similar topics. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, you will find the option to sign up with your email address. You only receive one email every Wednesday. That email is 100% content at free guarantee. In these emails, you find when do the live sessions take place and how can you access them. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there next time. Available, by the way, in English and in the English and German language. So feel free to bring international colleagues as well. Looking forward to seeing you there. And at the end of this podcast, the most important tip is always there. And that is the third step. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive change that you obviously want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. All the best of luck. And if you need any help, let me know. Available 24/7. And for the rest of this week, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.